Kia ora, it's Jack Pearpoint and I'm from Toronto and here with my wife and partner, Lynda.
We're really energized and delighted to be here, to be part of an occasion where the local area coordinators are coming together with family members and folks with disabilities to think about the kinds of futures they want and inspire each other and make new connections is really fitting with the initiative that's here in the Bay of Plenty, where people are now, through the role of the local area coordinators, able to provide facilitation and planning support to people and their families, to help folks gather, to vision, talk about their dreams out loud, and think about what it will take to get there. And then those local area coordinators are going to be involved in supporting people to make those connections and become part of everyday community life.
This really is cutting edge practice and it's really exciting that it's happening here. It is happening all over the world, but it's exciting that it's happening here, and it's happening in conjunction with a parallel initiative that's going to make a little bit of money more available for people to make their own individualized choices, because ultimately this will work best when people are in charge of their own lives, and that includes, I have some money and I'll decide. And so the parallel initiatives give it double the power, and I think you're going to see some very exciting new stories, new possibilities, new careers emerge from the initiatives that people create with a little bit of support, a little bit of money, and a lot of energy and talent.
Yeah, I really hope we've been part of a day that begins people staying in connection with each other. Could even be the beginning of a learning community where people are really thinking about the stories and the successes and even the interesting failures, where people are able to think together about what they're really learning is possible through the flexibility of that funding, having some ways that you can be in charge of that. Some things may come from some of the paid supports and services, other things might come from community memberships or associations, but ways that people will really learn a lot on the journey from one another. And folks have come together today and are beginning to make some new connections and listen to what each other care about.
The journey is going to be an interesting one, because many of us would assume that this is going to be something that is about what happens to folks with disability labels, and actually it's going to be reciprocal. Many of the gifts that are going to emerge will be the surprise to regular citizens who didn't know about, see, or hear the incredible talents that are available when we get together and listen to each other's stories. And we've been hearing that already here. We've had the opportunity to just very briefly have people tell each other stories, and they're full of incredible capacity and energy. So you don't need to go around the world. Actually, you can take the world to other people, because this is going to be an inspiration to others.
For example, in Ontario, the Windsor-Essex brokerage for personal supports has been in existence for about 14 years. There's some remarkable, actually, studies from the early demonstration years and the kinds of things they've learned on their journey that I suspect people would really be very open to share. And it also seems to me that the work in the United Kingdom, through the effort there that's called In Control, where there is independent facilitation and there is individualized budgeting. And there are some things that have gone really well and some things that have really been challenges. And there's some reports and writing about that I think would really be interesting to see. What's important is to be able to know what's happening in other places and maybe draw from some of those lessons, but then to think about what it's like in the place that you live, in your cultural context. And if there's anything that I learned from work that I did in New England for 24 years, was the importance of all the voices being in conversation over time, talking about what are we learning, right? The temptation, I worked inside public service in state government for 24 years. The greatest lessons I had were talking directly with family members, talking directly with people with disabilities and their friends and allies, talking with people who offered supports and services, and making connections in local community. And that if we kept in contact rather than creating policy in isolation from real people's experience, where then if you don't make changes in the policy based on real life and people's experience, where they say, well, that was an interesting idea, but here's how that's really working now, here's how we're affected, and then you can make the changes, which is the beauty of being able to have a demonstration here that's looking both at local area coordination with its independent facilitation and planning community connector role, and the innovation of individualized budgeting and funding, and seeing what kinds of things people do.
The connection role is absolutely vital, and the assumption that, well, we'll just give you a bunch of money and you'll figure it out, is pretty much proven to be not a bad idea, but not nearly good enough, because most of us actually don't know how to handle that kind of new responsibility. Plus, in most cases, pretty quickly, the bean counters invade, and they want degrees of accountability based on other systems and structures that end up being very, very destructive and dangerous to this whole effort. And this isn't about being malicious, it's about trying to count uncountable things in ways that don't make any sense. So as you move forward, it'll make a lot of sense to watch and notice how to appreciate and tell the stories about the remarkable successes, and they won't happen in 2 minutes. There's all the pre-work, and then there are little events, and then there's the follow-on that goes on for a long time. That's the work. And if you only want to count what happens on Monday morning at 10 o'clock, we're missing the point. And we need to be deep and broad in our appreciation of that.
So it's interesting being able to have photographs and even video of stories over time. As people start to expand their networks,
Yeah.
people share their own stories, and what they're learning will be very powerful, because in 6 months' time, when things have shifted, if you have no record, even of what it felt like now, or looked like now, or snapshots, there are people we've met already today that I wish we had photographs of the places they're living and the places they're working, and one woman and the writing that she's done, that I can imagine other occasions where people share those stories with each other, possibly even become part of one another's support networks or planning teams, and it's not value-free. Without an underlying set of values around the importance of belonging and being members of each other, and having valued roles and respect, and sharing typical places where other people are, and having autonomy and choice, and having valued contributions to share and being appreciated for your gifts and capacities, this wouldn't have the same kind of meaning. That funding and the facilitation need to be around those kinds of values, and they are here.
And the way to measure impact will be through stories.
Yes.
We couldn't agree more.
Stories have been how we have conveyed our culture since the dawn of time, and we need to remember that, honor it, and use it.
Right, doesn't John McKnight have a lovely, there's a lovely video clip we have of John McKnight talking about stories as being the language of community.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing.